I put I
the
put
TV.
I put an item with the stun invocation or the lightning invocation in as well. By the way.
Oh, cool, good. I'm glad I can use that again. This fucking shit's not cutting it. I'm gonna talk to you for a little while about some stuff. I've been talking about making a video, and we actually tried to make one the other day. We did an hour and 44 minutes of recording before I then tried sharing my screen at the same time in Discord as I was actually sharing recording my screen, and then it kicked my shit off, and then the video didn't work for like the whole hour and 20 minutes, like after the initial 20 minutes we were talking. So we're going to try it again. And the whole base was just, we were chatting about, what were we talking about again, man? Can you remind me? We were talking about heaps of stuff. We were talking about BG stuff. We were talking about
BG's meta, bloody
meta, build stuff.
new items, sets.
Yeah. Well, we'll try and get back there. You might just have to, because I'm pretty one track with my memory. And I know we're talking about the main thing was we're talking about your build and a breakdown of your build and why you use it and stuff, and we'll get to that point. But yeah, who are you? You're Trappuccino, the immortal, the big man,
Trappadoodle. Yep.
Trappadoodle, the big man. So yeah, we'll start with the issues we were sort of facing. I think where we started the other day was lengthy BGQ times, and there's something going on about that now, right? Like you just asked me for my BattleNet ID and all this stuff the other day. Why were you asking me for that?
Yeah, so because we've got basically two queues, or two tiers in BGs. One has all the players that got legend in the first cycle of the game. The player pool is pretty limited, and then I guess everybody else is in the other bracket, so to speak. So effectively, we've sort of come together as a group, grabbed player details, BattleNet IDs, character IDs, trying to get the issue fixed. So the devs are apparently aware of it now that we've sent it in, and hopefully we'll get a fix.
Yeah, because we got in Oceanic, we've got two brackets, right? We've got like the original bracket, and we've got, well, when I say original bracket, what we've come to learn was that the players that reach legend first, like as the game launched, were put into one like PvP bracket, and then the players that came to legend later, like because there was just a really high number of players playing at the time the game launched. I guess they couldn't fit them all into one place, so then they put the second bunch of players into a different bracket. But then those brackets have been retained like the whole way through the game, and all the new players that have started have gone into that second bracket, and no one's coming into ours. Like new players don't come into ours unless there's three. Like, do you think there could potentially be three? I've thought about this before. Maybe there's like another bracket as well with like below Paragon 100 players in it and stuff. Like even really, really new players. But that must be like a tiny. Do you think that could be a thing?
Hard to say because I mean, with one of my mates just recently started playing again. He's 200 and he's still or Paragon 200 and he's still matching in with the big 7K Krakens in the other bracket. So it could be like when those accounts have been created, but as far as I'm aware, there's only two brackets.
Yeah,
So
because we're not
yeah,
getting any new blood into ours, and we've been playing with the same people since the game came out, and it's where like all of the heavy spenders are, or most of the heavy spenders. Well, there's still a lot of heavy spenders in the other bracket now as well, but like we're just like really strictly tied to fighting into the same people over and over and over again. And because there are so few of us, because heaps of people have left, obviously, a lot of the players that originally started playing got sick of fighting into like Krakens and just quit, or like just left just due to like poor game release stuff, bad updates or whatever, shit items, whatever the problems were. People have left, and then we've just been sort of stuck with these players that are like really invested, and it's hard. Like it's quite hard where we are. Trap's
yeah.
probably
It's
one of the people that clean. You're one of the dudes that clean everyone up. So for you, it's okay, but for me, it's really hard. Trap's like my Trap's been carrying my sandbag ass through this game since we started playing together back ages ago. I'm like supporting Trap. Trap's doing the DPS. But then when you play against someone like Trap who's in the high 6Ks, where are you at? I'm just gonna look at you.
6-6.
6.6, yeah. And really good base stats and stuff. Gems are all really well done and stuff. Could be crazy. We've seen people go mental with their gems and stuff, right? Like, so you're still not like out of the park, but you are definitely up there, and you're like one of the top monks on the server. So you don't have you don't have huge problems, but you do have some, right? We're talking about what was bothering us in BG. You were telling me some stuff the other day. You said the sets, banquet set.
Yeah,
How
it
do you
was
feel
pretty
about
well. It's pretty well just banquet set. Like, I think the meta's in a good spot with all the new items and class balance. The tower PvP changes from damage to health has shaken a few things up, but I mean it's pretty self evident that new set is overperforming on certain classes. So I guess monk's one of those that needs the shield to stay alive, and if you take one bit of stray damage, you lose 3/4 of your health. It's it's pretty shit gameplay, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you've had such a free kick for such a fucking long time. I feel like as much as you hate it, maybe like it's kind of needed in a way. Like there's something now that can deal with you guys a little bit more to bring you a little bit more back down to earth. Where you were just having such a free kick, man. Like you guys even used to say it to me, like when we were talking, I'd be like, "This monk shit," especially for a necro player which relies completely on CC, or the way I play it anyway. I rely completely on my CC to do anything. And when my CC doesn't work, I have no damage, like outside of like spikes that don't do anywhere near enough like burst to strip your shield or anything like that. And there's been things said, I've heard that when damage is tied to knockups or stuns and stuff, that it doesn't actually penetrate the shields. So I don't know if that's actually I don't know if how legit that is. I think I heard that on one of DM's things. He was talking to some of the American dudes, the American whales, and they said something. One of them was like a necro man, one of the bigger necro mans on the US server, and he was like, yeah, so yeah, when you like spike something, if spikes have a knock up and the damage comes with a knock up, then that target is shielded. The knock up. It just takes the knock up, but it doesn't take the damage. And then if you're CC immune, you're gonna not gonna take the knock up, obviously, and you're not gonna take the damage. So like, I just felt like such a sitting duck for the monks that I was playing against in our bracket. Like it made sense because I'd be sitting there spiking them. They might even be CC'd and stuff, and I just wasn't getting through them. So yeah, the new set is a pain, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe
Like,
they brought
I
that
mean,
out as
that's
like a maybe they brought that out as like a way to sort of squash monks down a little bit because they were just overly strong instead of nerfing them. Like they didn't do any hard nerfs to monk, right? Like they didn't do any hard. It was just more just buffs to other classes to make them more
no,
relevant.
they've got it Chimmerlin from PvP. It's not as good as it used to be. I don't know. Our bracket doesn't really run it. There's one or two guys that do, but um, we've predominantly been Imprisoned Fist or Seven-Sided Strike.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of brings us to what we were going to talk about. Your build because you've been using a like a one shot build, high DPS build with low CC, right, for quite a while. And we were calling it your build, and now a lot of people are adapting or adopting that build to their own characters. So do you want to? I'll just inspect you now. You can tell me a little bit about it and why you use it and stuff and why it's good. Have you got your PvP
Um,
stuff on?
yeah, I do. So I'll start with the shoulders because that's effectively what it revolves around. So when they released Fade of Light, um, was right as the Essence Mastery came out as well. So um, I read the patch notes and saw basically Mystic Strike causes your next skill within 4 seconds to deal 30% increased damage. So my first thought went to comboing that with Seven-Sided Strike. And then yeah, effectively once I had a chance to play with the build, um, the amount of damage output that that Seven Sided Strike can do after proccing this Mystic Strike skill damage buff is insane. It's it's the difference between hitting at my resonance a 200k Seven Sided Strike into a 350 to 400k Seven Sided Strike. So it's a massive damage increase.
Yeah, that's massive. That's huge. And you've got cooldown on it as well because you've got awakening gems. So
Yeah, so the cooldown definitely helps. So in effect, the shoulders is what makes the build function, and that in conjunction with the pants. Um, so there's two options you can run with. There's Traveling Scold, which does a small knock up, but after experimenting with it for a little bit, I've come to like Branding Bond a lot more. It's an instant teleport as opposed to a knock up in an area. Um, doesn't say it in the skill description, but there's a small interrupt, so you can basically cancel people's skills, and there's no wind down timer after it. So as soon as you dash in, I can seven sided strike straight away. So it's a really good engage tool.
yeah, I noticed that a lot. Like when I get dashed through by monks or with by you, I get put into like a lock. It's like I was saying it the other day when we were recording our other video. It's like faster hit recovery lock in D2. You like get not stunned, but you like get not even like knocked back, but your character just sort of moves or gets misaligned or something, and then you can't cast skills or like you can't if you're like trying to cast a skill, if you're spamming to cast like bone armor, for example, and then you get like hit locked or like fast hit recovery locked or like stunned like that, you just can't use it at all, or it cancels it, so it doesn't actually appear on your model, and then it goes on cooldown instantly, which is bad,
Yeah,
man. That's the worst thing to be trying to do when you really need a wraith form, like when I really need a wraith form to try and become invulnerable, and then I get like locked and then I can't use it. It's like the worst thing to be in that position. But yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I guess the combination between the shoulders giving extra skill damage after cast, and then Mystic Struck actually doing fairly decent damage with the pants itself. So I mean, just from my stats, uh, Mystic Struck does about 19k base, but as soon as I start using the essence, it goes up to 31k. So it's more than a 50% damage increase. So
yeah,
it turns what used to be a mobility skill into a really good damage skill.
yeah, true. So it's just it's still all dashes, right? Like Zen Shield, you're not using as a dash, but like your other skills are all dashes. You were saying the other day.
Yeah, with the main hand I use Purchase Presence. It turns seven sided strike into a dash. So initially when I was trying out the build, I wasn't using this main hand. I was using just the base seven sided strike, and still using intervening law for the teleport. But I found using the base variant of um, of Shield of Zen, I can actually give Zen Shield to another ally, which is really beneficial in some circumstances.
Yeah, helps me a lot. I've been noticing that helps me heaps as well, right? CC
Yeah,
immunity is
so
like a
I guess the build lost a fair bit of CC not running Imprisoned Fist anymore. But this main hand actually allows you to chain lock someone while they're getting knocked back during the whole stun animation. And it's also a displacement, so it'll push people off idols. You can hit people from a fair distance away, so you can use it as a gap closer. But predominantly, it's given its cooldown, so it's only got one charge, and it's on a 12-second cooldown. Outside of cooldown reduction, um, so it's a very high nuke. So you can use it to pick off a high value target straight away. And in 9 out of 10 cases, if you take out one of the big guys or a crusader that's on a team that's going to shield one of their big guys, you can just turn the fight instantly in your favor.
yeah, and I think what I've been noticing a lot lately is we mentioned this the other day, the curse properties that you take are really important with this build too, right? You were saying because you use tortured, which when you use the
Yeah,
dash, you can root people or like stun them for an amount of time. Then that can like you could stun people in a line potentially, right? Because it leaves the flames behind you. If you have four people lock into those flames, then you can just dash through all four of them or five of them or whatever, right?
yeah. So the whole presence of the build is trying to line up. So your damage works in lines. So you want to be able to engage and then Mystic Strike initially to get the damage buff, but you also want to use it for the dash property on the tortured set. So what that does is it locks someone in place or immobilizes them for 2 seconds. And once you've got the six piece, it actually reduces the cooldown from 30 seconds down to 9 seconds. So it's a very high uptime, especially at least with my resonance and potency. That 2 second immobilize turns into 3 seconds in some cases. But the biggest thing is when it roots someone in place, you can really line up seven sided strikes. So it goes from being a hard skill to aim to something that almost guarantees the hit.
Yeah, yeah, that's broken. When everyone's sort of stuck in a line, it just gives you so much free reign to just sweep through them. That's cool. And I was gonna say, do you think that this is a build that you need awakened gems to really rely on all those cooldowns and stuff like that? Or does it work without a gem awakening? Is it still good, do you think, without it?
The awakening certainly helps. The most important one I would say is the shoulders, purely for the cooldown reduction. So given the build runs in certain cycles, having extra cooldown reduction on Mystic Strike in particular allows you to combo Mystic Strike with Flying Kick at around the same rotation. So Mystic Strike's got a 12-second cooldown, Flying Kick's got a 9-second cooldown. So the more you can get sort of Mystic Strike's cooldown in line with Flying Kick, um, you can basically do a juiced up Flying Kick every 9 seconds as opposed to having to wait for Mystic Strike to come off cooldown before you can do your engage. So the extra cooldown helps with your rotations.
Yeah, so you'd be chasing cooldown reduction on your set pieces as well, right?
Yeah, so I guess the build predominantly rolls around combinations. So the more often you can get the combinations off, the better. It's a high DPS spec, so you lose out on crowd control outside of the small little interrupt that's on Mystic Strike, and then the long interrupt that's on seven sided. Um, you've got a couple of little burst windows. The curse set has definitely helped get some of that crowd control back. But yeah, the set items are predominantly built around cooldown reduction and damage to players. So they're the two stats you want to look for.
Yeah. So what? So you've gone through shoulders and main hand and pants. I don't know
Yeah.
whether did you explain the pants and why you use these?
Yeah, so it's basically a teleport, but it'll work really well here. So if you stop inspecting my character,
Mm.
um, if I try and fly and kick through this, it won't work. I'll basically bounce off it.
Yep.
If I try and seven-sided strike into it, I'll bounce off it. But with these pants, it's a teleport, so I can actually teleport right through that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right to the other side. So anything from pillars, you can use it to go around terrain. So if you've got someone on the other side of the wall, you can teleport straight through and hit them.
True. That's like so anything that's like bone prison, if anyone was ever using that, or anything that you would normally lock something into, you can actually dash out of it.
Yeah,
Wraithform
it does.
goes through some things, but it doesn't go through hard terrain and stuff like that as well. So that's
Yeah,
handy.
yeah. So it allows you to escape around corners. So like if you're in BGs and there's a corner here that you can't go around, you just
You
teleport
cut
right through
through
it.
it. That's cool. All right, so that's the main reason that you want to use those pants then, right?
Yeah, it just adds to the mobility of the build. So you lose a bit of mobility not having intervening law on your main hand. So you can make up for it in other areas.
So what would people be using in place of these items that you're using? Like what's the most common thing that you are seeing people take? You're saying it's imprisoned fist or something, right? So
Yeah, so
most
Imprison Fist is the other variant. So the shoulder spot is the main build defining slot for monks. So these shoulders is where you'd have Shimmerlin Wave of Light. It's also where you'd have the Imprisoned Fist uppercut. So the shoulder spot is basically what determines your build options. Um, so because you've got to make the hard choice between Shimmerlin, which is nerfed now, so I don't actually think that spec is viable. Imprisoned Fist uh, makes up in lockdown, but it doesn't have the raw DPS that this spec can do. So you know, like I said, it's basically high skill, high reward. If you can pick off a someone instantly, then you don't have to worry about crowd controlling them because they're just not there.
They're gonna die.
I would rather, yeah, I would rather delete someone and not have to worry about CCing them.
Yeah, fair enough. What else offhand? Do you want to talk about the offhand, or would you talk about the chest and the headpiece?
I'll touch on the offhand. So twitching palms basically the staple for all monks. The lightning bolts that come out when you do your first auto attack actually have fairly good damage uptime, and you can basically like skill queue cancel to basically ensure a first strike. So you can Fist of Thunder on somebody, Mystic Strike, Fist of Thunder, and basically proc the lightning bolts within 2 auto attacks. So every time you use a skill between your first auto attacks, you can keep resetting the attack cycle and get more of these thunderbolts off. So it gives you a little bit of extra burst on your main attacks.
Yeah, show me those bolts. Show me those bolts, baby. Yeah, it's a pretty wide AoE as well.
Yeah, so they shoot off in random directions. So it's normally going to be on the main target, you'll get the bolts to proc. But you can have people off to the side that get killed sort of mid screen just from these bolt procs. So they're pretty helpful when covering a little bit of AoE.
How fast are your autos? Go ahead and auto something for me. Okay. Because you used to use Urge, right? Attack speed's very,
Yeah,
very helpful.
yeah,
No doubt.
yeah. Yeah, so with the nerf to Urge, I used to run Urge all the time with the Imprisoned Fist build. It just allowed you to get your stuns off quicker, your skills off quicker. It turned Monk from an assassin into a really strong brawler. You could get in like almost 2 cycles of auto attacks before your stun would wear off, so you do a lot of DPS very quickly. So in any sort of 1v1 fight, if you've got a monk that's got Urge, it pumps out a lot of DPS. But I guess with Gloom coming out, the crit buff in particular is it's something you've got to really make a choice behind. And like I just think 22% crit every time I dash, no cooldown on it, so you can just constantly keep rocking it. It's sort of the go-to now.
Yeah. And also, I feel like if you were using Urge, you'd probably be like more forced to sit in a place, right, while you're just pumping away with auto attacks. So that would leave you in a more it's almost like channeling, right? Like you're just sitting there punching something that you're open then to all sorts of other stuff hitting you and shit.
Yeah, so it's a different playstyle. So I think it's only viable if you're running a lockdown build. So Imprison Fist, just because it gives you that extra time to get your auto attacks off. But I just think because the way crit interacts with block chance, if you crit, then block chance doesn't work. So the the added block chance that everyone's running these days, the crit just bypasses that entirely.
Yeah, true. I didn't even think about that. Sorry, you sort of counter high block builds and stuff like that.
Yep.
Good for satyrs, good for barbs running high block and stuff. Good for Holy Light when he was a barb. What about your headpiece and your chest? These are just
Yeah,
like the
that's
normal
yeah.
pieces that most people would take, right? Or are they a little bit tweaked?
No, they're pretty well the standard now for monks. So the chest basically gives you extra move speed, makes you move unhindered. So it's a very good mobility tool. And me being able to give Zen Shield to another party member means they can also benefit from it. So it's got some synergy there. Um, I guess the main choice with the headpiece is whether you want a longer lasting, like a longer duration on Shield of Zen. But with the amount of dots in the game now, Seeping Bile banquet set. This allows you to completely purge that damage over time effect and basically get your heal off. So if you're on really low health, I can pop my shield, it'll completely purge, say, a Seeping Bile, and I can get a full heal off. And same with Banquet. The kicker is if I give Shielded Zen to someone else, like another party member, when I give them that Zen shield, it actually purges any a negative effect that they've got as well.
Yeah, so it fully just makes your Zen shield work the way it would on you on anyone else as well. So the speed, the purge, like all that good stuff, right?
Yeah, it duplicates it. It puts the CC immunity on someone, so you can imagine if you put her onto a barbarian that can't get crowd controlled, it's a fairly strong tool. Um, so normally you'd just be teleporting onto yourself, but it's got a small distance teleport as well. So even though it's not a direct teleport, you can teleport to an ally,
Yeah,
and give them Zen Shield. So
yeah,
it's a good tool.
yeah. That's cool, man. Well, it certainly would help you set things up, like even just being able to teleport to someone else, because the person that you're teleporting to is usually going to be the place that you want to be anyway, right? Like it's likely where
Yeah,
you're going to go.
it's either engaging or disengaging, but it also allows if you're on comms to say, "Look, I'm on low health,"
Yeah, come
um, and
closer.
and I can get a purge off and a small shield to hopefully save them.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, okay. So that's that. And then like, why do you? Did we talked about why you're using it? Like, would you go back to using Imprisoned Fist? Do you think that there's ever any chance that you want to switch it off this now, or like you really quite set on where you are with it?
No, I mean the biggest changes in the meta at the moment is there's a lot more necros because there was more barbarians in the meta to counter monks, and monks are a direct counter to all the necros. So with more people switching off of barbarian to some of the more CC orientated classes, the build works stronger against them. But the biggest one is with the amount of demon hunters in the meta at the moment. Um,
Yeah,
the
so many.
yeah, the new knockback chest interrupts so many skills. The good thing with seven sided strikers is it's got a little bit of a wind up, but once you get through that wind up, you're completely invulnerable. It's a full iframe for the duration. Um, so if you're teleporting right on top of a monk or on top of a demon hunter, and then seven sided striking them, they physically can't hit you. They can't crowd control you. You're completely invulnerable during the animation.
Mm, no, it's really strong, no doubt. What about your stones? You using Jolt? We decided to Jolt together. I remember we were talking about it, what we should be taking when the stones were still happening. Jolt just seemed like a no-brainer for me. Do you
Yeah,
like
so
you,
I
you
guess
still like it?
so originally I was using Jolt because I was barbarian initially, and the ability that the three pieces give you to stop a CC lock. So the way Jolt works with Chip of Stone Flesh, it actually stuns an attacker. And it happens wherever the opponent's character is. So they don't have to be in melee range if someone hits you from range and Jolt procs. It'll actually stun them at their location. So it's a huge way to get some counter CC off when you're getting CC locked. So I just like the defensive benefit of it, given there's so much offense in the meta at the moment. Um,
Yeah,
so it allows me just to have extra duration, less damage when I'm getting crowd controlled, and then just generally damage reduction from players.
yeah,
Um, Outside of that, attack speed, so you can get the skills off quicker. And I've recently changed it into block chance as opposed to primary attack damage just to get a little bit more tank, and it seems to be working pretty well.
yeah, yeah. So block chance over, say, attack speed. Did you start statting for attack speed, and then or was that was that me? You already have your attack speed sorted.
Yeah, so I had my attack speed sorted. I was using primary attack damage to get more single target sustained DPS once my skills were down, but given the amount of damage that's in the meta at the moment, you sort of want to come in and out. I don't use that many auto attacks outside of teleporting to do an engage or to teleport between the fights. So auto attacks don't make up a lot of my rotation now.
Yeah. Attack speed helps heaps though, hey. I noticed I've only got a couple of things rolled with attack speed. I've only got maybe like 3 or 4 things rolled with attack speed, but I was saying I feel like there's a break point where if you get like what 6% attack speed, like with 2 to 4, you like don't even notice the attack speed difference. But then when you hit like the 6 or the 8 or whatever it is, you really notice it. So it's like it goes to a certain point before it actually kicks in and changes. But you need a certain amount to actually reach that break point.
Yeah,
Um,
so I've got 17%. It's definitely noticeable as opposed to not having it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, Yeah, I'm trying to think what I was saying the other day about like with urges attack speed. Remember when they nerfed it? The attack speed variant was like what it said that it gave you how much? Was it 30? But it was boosting it to like
It was boosting
fucking
it to 60%, so
yeah,
it
60.
was a huge it was a huge DPS boost.
Yeah, I think that there's something going on with attack speed like that. Like I think that whole thing with urge and you giving way too much. And then like, I was saying breakpoints on the stones and stuff like that. It's probably like there's thresholds in like, non-stated thresholds in place that like you have to hit a certain percentage for in order for it to push you up to like that next breakpoint where you actually attack visibly faster. Because you can get it if you roll it on gear as well, right? Like you could roll it on like your. I think it comes on what shoulders, doesn't it, or like
Yeah,
head?
helm, shoulders, and the two weapons.
Yeah, yeah. It would be really strong to just have attack speed on all of your stuff. So Joel and sets. You talked about your set pieces. It's kind of like a no-brainer. Everyone uses Gloom on Monk now anyway, right? Like some people use 4 Gloom and then 2 Urge or something, right?
Yeah,
Or
so,
four.
so, so it depends on the meta, but anyone using the stun builds, we're using 4 Gloom with 2 Baron for the extra crowd control. But given this build is primarily based around one shots and trying to do as much DPS as possible, the 4 piece is a no brainer, but the 6 piece, as soon as I started using this, pretty well, if there's a squishy class that I dash on and Gloom goes off, uh, the the damage between Mystic Strike dash and the Gloom proc will still one shot like most Demon Hunters and Necros. So
Yeah, it's too
it
strong. It's too fucking strong. Everyone thinks so, right? Like everyone that I know that plays into monks and stuff with gloom. Even other dudes like AK was playing Barb and he was using gloom. It's like it's just too strong. It needs to be nerfed. Like I Trinity would fucking run gloom and like I once there was a game. It was so funny. I held this dude captive after he was being a smart ass talking shit, and we ended up passing phase 1 in battleground, and both teams ran down to like phase 2 where the idols sort of spawn, like the idols start walking. And I CC'd him, and he ran back into his base from like where the idols were, and I followed, and he locked himself in a cage, and he just sat in his base healing, and then he'd just wait until his gloom came up, and then he'd run out and he'd charge me, and I'd like shield myself and live, and like I wouldn't be healing, obviously. I didn't have a base anywhere near me, and I couldn't bandage because if I tried bandaging, he'd just see me and fucking charge me again. So I was just literally just having to survive, and it took 9 minutes for him, but he finally, right at the very end, he just kept going in. He'd nearly die. I'd proc him. He'd go into Undying Rage, and then he'd run back into his thing, and then he'd wait for his Glim to come back out and charge me again, and then he'd run back into his thing, and I just keep sitting there. I wasn't going to let him play. So neither of us played, and I lost that game, by the way. I just let it fucking. For me, the game was not necessarily winning that BG. It was fucking making sure that cunt didn't fucking play. So we sat there, we did that, but the whole thing for me was this is like a tiny, tiny dude. Like he's not a very strong guy, but he could still nearly like if that gloom crit, it nearly killed me. And like I've got quite a lot of health for like a necro. I got decent armor and stuff like that, but it's really strong. on anything. And like we did this, we were playing around. You were talking to me. Trap was trying to be my hype guy to turn into a damaged necro. He's like, "Come on, man, we're gonna make you a nuke necro. We're gonna put all the damage things on you. You can put gloom on." When we thought these dash pants were coming out, that was gonna make gloom viable for necro. We already had that, but like we didn't have the pants that were coming out with a fear on it. And then the pants came out with a fear on them, and they'd only let you teleport to a target. So it's like instant death, and then your race form goes on cooldown and stuff. So like it's literally just like this kamikaze build for necro or whatever, like they would with like they do with wizard back in the day. But yeah, I use it with my PvE stuff, and it's so strong. Like it hits really hard. Is there any way you could make anything else work in those set slots? You couldn't, right? Like that's just it. Could you do something with like because four Baron is really strong, right? I've never really seen any monks running four Baron. I guess you have to just give too much up to make that work. And your build specifically, as you've said, it's not really there for CC. It's there for damage. But do you know of any? Like, have you ever thought of a build where you'd just be like hard CCing and doing plenty of damage to targets that are crowd controlled? Like maybe take stun, like the monks take stun ring and then run for Baron and like just do shitloads of damage because the targets are all under CC. Does that work? Or then you could potentially take on your stones like damage to targets suffering loss of control and like beef it up even more that way. Or even take
I mean, there's plenty of
two banquet and have a damage, have your bile proc with something that's like then they're suffering continual damage and they're CC'd and then you're hitting them. Like would that be more damage even than Gloom could put out or no way?
no. So with the nerfs to Shumlin, like the damage over time proc for Banquet's not going to work. And I mean outside of the two piece Baron set, you give up too much DPS, whether you're using four Gloom or four Urge as the primary set with it. The 20% damage buff just doesn't do enough to make it worth using. So
Yeah.
the only other thing I'd consider using is a six piece mount bank set for
Oh,
the
that's right.
extra
We were talking
the
about that
extra
last
proc.
time too. Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool to like know when because you get a yellow shield when your mount bank set's gonna actually pop for the damage based on your health. And that damage, if you could dash onto someone when you know it's gonna come, would be massive, right? Would be huge. And then you have all of the awesome stuff that mount bank does behind you. You'd be heaps tankier. The shield procs all the time.
Yeah,
We were talking about like
the trade off is 15% damage and permanent extra 20% crit. So you're basically banking on becoming more tanky and that 25% proc on the 6 piece set going off.
which it
Pretty
doesn't.
often. But yeah, it feels way less than 25%.
Yeah, I like we were saying the other day. I think it's because what it's like it's a 25% chance for the actual explosion to happen. What is the percentage chance for the normal thing to happen? Is it the same? Let me just check. I can't remember. Well, the four pieces are 20% chance. Yeah, Mount Bank Shield is a 25% chance when it expires. So you got the 20% chance for it to actually give you the shield to begin with, and then it doesn't happen when you're shielded with white health, right? So you
Yeah,
could be
so
running,
the bubble that's around you has to be yellow. So you'll know if it's proc the 25% from the 6 piece every time the 4 piece goes off. So it'll give you a big shield, but um, you know, apparently 75% of the time it'll be white, and that 25% you get
yeah,
the shield that explodes. But I remember when we were testing it, it felt like it was 5%. So
yeah. It felt
I
so small. It felt so
so
small.
I haven't dabbled in it since.
Yeah, we were testing it when Trump was on Barb, and I was thinking about trying to run it as well. It was like when rings came out. That's how long ago we like tested. I remember we finally got rings, and we were like, let's just test everything, and we just like went out and sat in frozen tundra, and we were just waiting for yetis to fucking hit us. And Trap and I went through like three life pools before the mount bank proc went off. And it seems silly, like when the shield itself goes off, every 20% chance to actually proc the shield. That happened all the time. Like that happened all the time. Went off really often, but the shield that explodes didn't go off at all. Over dying 3 times, especially on a barb and through undying rage and all that sort of stuff, it just seemed really not worth it at all. Didn't seem like it's there's so many question marks on all these set things and stuff. Like it's the game's been out for like nearly a year, and I still think there's like shady stuff going on where it'll say the percentage of something happening is like this X chance, and then it doesn't work that way. I just think that they're lying to us. Either they're lying to us or something's just broken and they just don't know how to fix it. Like the descriptions for things are wrong. The descriptions
Well,
for the gems were wrong. Like
I mean, just the amount of damage that the 6 gloom hits. Um, if it was anything near close to what the tooltip was, it'd do the equivalent of 2 auto attacks, and it definitely does way more than 2 auto attacks.
yeah, well that's like we were saying, it's buffed damage to unbuffed damage, right? So the display damage of something when you're reading it on the tooltip is always lower, but then when it's buffed by your res and all of your like your gems and whatever else, like then it's gonna do heaps more. Like it does a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. What else do you want to tell me about, man? Do you want to talk about anything to do with BGs? We nearly got raids in like what 4 minutes, so we don't have a lot more time.
We'll have Corvus first, but yeah. No, not really. I mean, I think we've sort of covered
Covered
everything.
it. Man, I'm just so disappointed in the other video. The other video was so good. It was so much fun. The other video was so much fun. I even had you demonstrating how far you can dash, and I was comparing it with Wraith Form and all this sort of stuff. I'll try and fix it. We'll see if we can maybe I'll send the video to Craven and see if he can patch it up or something, because that's the one that I want to bring out. But this was good too. At least it covers your build and stuff. And if anything else happens with monks, then I can showcase for you. I'll get you to come back and we'll do something like this again.
Sure, sounds good.
Cool, man. Thank you for talking. Appreciate you. Love you.
No worries. Thanks, mate.
All right. Catch you later.